Joe from As the Joe Flies.
And I'm Leslie from Trips with Tykes.
And welcome back to Disney Deciphered. So on today's episode, we had a request in from Sarah B. Thank you so much for sending in your question. And she asked, we've talked about visiting Disneyland if you know Walt Disney World well and stuff like that, but we wanted to do an attraction-focused episode, do a little tiering of what attractions you might want to focus on if you're going to Disneyland, and especially if you know Disney World pretty well. Before we get to that, let's do a little housekeeping. A reminder: we are on YouTube now, and we are trying to hit some subscriber milestones. So youtube.com/@DisneyDeciphered. If you could like and subscribe there, we'd really appreciate it. Of course, you can find old episodes of the podcast anywhere you find podcasts, audio form. Also, thank some new Patreon subscribers. Sarah B actually resubscribed, so thank you, Sarah, and also Jessica S. Thank you so much for your support. Those of you who join the Patreon will receive bonus content, access to a Facebook group, trip reports, and all that good stuff. Patreon.com/DisneyDeciphered if you're interested in that. Okay, Leslie, so you've done all the notes. Things have been a little bit crazy in the Chung household. Do you want to give us like a general overview of what we're going to be talking about today, and I guess maybe a quick reminder about what Disney World people need to know about Disneyland to start off?
I mean, if you know World, land is easier. You got 3 on-property hotels, 2 theme parks within walking distance of each other, and it's definitely less stress, but you have a lot of the same systems. You've got Genie Plus, works a little differently. You've got early entry for on-property hotels. So a lot of the knowledge transfers, that's the good news. And then there are a lot of attractions that are the same or that have the same name, but that are different. And then plenty of unique attractions as well. So a lot of people, if they're just doing a Disneyland trip, often are only going for maybe a day or 2 or maybe even 3, and they want to know what to prioritize, what they can skip based upon, what they already are used to at World. So that's what we're going to be focusing on here. And I struggled a bit with sort of the system and the method of organization that I was going to use for this. But roughly speaking, I'm going to start with the must-do attractions, like the absolute top of the list. You got to do these, assuming you're tall enough and, all of that good stuff. Then I have a section of strongly consider these attractions. And then I have only if you're really interested in this kind of attraction. And then I have attractions and lands that you can just entirely ignore.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of like if you only have 1 day in Disneyland, 2 days in Disneyland, 3 days in Disneyland, whole week in Disneyland situation, although you can't buy more than a 5-day ticket. A couple other things that as a Disney World regular kind of surprised me about Disneyland is there are definitely attractions who do not have Lightning Lane access via Genie Plus or individual Lightning Lanes. That's because space-wise it's so much smaller. The queue is so short that they just have no room to put a Lightning Lane. And then the other thing, of course, that we talk about all the time is Disneyland is so much more compact, and which makes park hopping a lot easier and makes getting from ride to ride a lot easier. And it also makes when you are doing touring, at Walt Disney World, if you're kind of touring for the shortest lines, sometimes you're zigzagging across a park, but that's like a huge distance. Whereas at Disneyland, it's not too bad. So let's get to these lists, and maybe we'll hit on a couple of attractions per tier to talk about what people can expect there, especially the ones that don't look like Disney World. But why don't we kick things off with the must-dos if you're visiting Disneyland, especially if you've only been at Disney World before?
Of course. So number 1 must do for me, and the Genie Plus wait times would agree, is Indiana Jones in Disneyland Park. I mean, obviously it's a thrill ride. It has a pretty high height minimum, so it's not going to be something that you'll do with toddlers. But if you're into thrill rides and everybody's big enough, you really should do this. And it's not too thrilling. It's not as scary as a coaster. So I do think, you can kind of ease kids into it, even if they're not riding Space Mountain yet. Maybe they can be okay with Indiana Jones. The only point of sensitivity with that one is that it's really loud. And it still does break down a lot. So that's something you have to sort of watch for. But it was refurbed recently this spring, and it looks bright and shiny and new. I just rode it again on a trip very, very recently, and it was the best I've seen it in probably a decade. So now's the time to do it before it breaks again.
Wait,
So
so
that's
yeah, so are you breaking things down by park, or like are you starting with Disneyland and then you're gonna go to California Adventure?
yeah.
Because
I'm going to start with Disneyland must dos. I'll talk about DCA must dos next, which is a smaller list.
okay, because all right, because
All right.
like we would have had some words, but yeah, sorry. Continue with
Okay.
your
Okay. There you
Disneyland
go.
list. I want to make sure clear to people. I think people might have thrown their phones out already because, well,
No, it's
you
not
know what's
number one
coming.
in the resort. Yeah, we
Yeah.
know what's coming.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right, sticking to Disneyland Park, I also would recommend Matterhorn very reluctantly, and I know you skipped it when you went to Disneyland, but it's a classic. I mean, you got to try it. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts your back. Take your Advil. It's awkward to get in and out of, but it's a classic, and you got to do it at least once. I don't do it every trip anymore, but if you've never done it, please do it.
No, I will not. Sorry, but I might send my kids this time. I might have my kids do it on their own. All right. What next?
Okay, next up are two in Fantasyland, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, because it's one of the last of the super weird, historic dark rides. It's a little scary, so beware if you've got toddlers. I won't spoil the ending, but you won't believe what the ending is if you don't know what it is. And yeah, got to do that. Super weird, throwbacky. Disney is at its best when it's like the weird historical stuff. So definitely on that one. Also, somewhat weird, but not as weird, is Alice in Wonderland, which is a dark ride. And that's just very, very good. And it's not in world, and it's always one of the longer lines. So definitely give that a go early in the morning because there's no Genie Plus for that. So those two in Fantasyland are my must dos. We'll have a few more that are in my next tier. Strongly consider. So moving over to New Orleans Square, you got to do Pirates of the Caribbean. And you're probably like, Leslie, they have that at Disney World. No, they do not. Not in the same tier. Pirates is so much better at Disneyland, so much more extensive. It's just almost in my mind a different ride. So you've got to do that. And then you will never look at Pirates at Disney World the same again.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to going in August because when I took my daughter last April, it was under refurb, and so we couldn't go to Blue Bayou. Actually, we could have gone to Blue Bayou, but it would have just been eating with scaffolding, which I think is not the point. Going to Blue Bayou, and we didn't get to ride on Pirates, so that's kind of like number one on my list of what to hit that I didn't get to hit last time.
Yeah, totally agree. You'll enjoy it, Joe. And then the last pick within Disneyland Park, at least, is the Disneyland Railroad. It's, of course, a classic, but it has some super weird, throwbacky kind of scenes. You go through some dioramas that you don't get at World. So totally love it, especially if you were Joe's middle child who loves all forms of transportation.
Does it go through a show building? Is that why they have that stuff? Because it's almost like you're inside. It's not even like a tunnel. And yeah, does Disney own Land Before Time? I don't know, but just a little tease of what you might see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I need to go back and like read some of the history of that. I've known it at some point and have forgotten some of it. And when Splash Mountain was open, you could actually see part of the Splash Mountain scene. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to transform that with Tiana's Bayou Adventure and what they're going to show in that scene. So that's going to be interesting. So stay tuned for that. All right, moving over to DCA. This is the ride that you were like, Leslie, you should have started with this one, Radiator Springs Racers. It is one of Disney's absolute best. It's test track, but with amazing theming. Cars Land in and of itself is just fantastic to see, especially at night. I always feel like I'm actually on Route 66 when I ride Radiator Springs Racers. So it's fantastic. Height minimum is only 40 inches. So my daughter was able to do it at 3.5, and it's not super, super scary. So I think you can coax even some more reluctant kids onto it. It's just enough speed without being terrifying. So highly, highly recommend that. I know you would agree, right, Joe?
Yeah, 100%. I was like, Leslie, you're starting with, I don't even remember what you started with at this. Oh, I was like, Indiana Jones, another ride that I really don't like, even though I did do that one. Also hurt my back. By the way, I was closing my eyes through most of the ride because I'm a big chicken. But yeah, Radiator Springs Racers, we've said it multiple times. I just don't think it can be oversold. It's just like so nice. And yeah, I agree. Like it is like you are on Route 66 and then going for a little bit of a race. So yeah, yeah, it's almost like we haven't done any Disneyland ride guides, but I almost want to do it just to talk about Radiator Springs Racers. I know that all my kids will love it, and even my super short kids, they've all been tall enough, so it's a great time and just a lot of fun. You don't have to like cars to appreciate it, but if you like cars, you'll appreciate it even more. All right, what else in DCA?
All right. Also in DCA, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. A lot of people want to dismiss this because it used to be the Tower of Terror. It is awesome. The overlay and the theming and the redo of it, in my mind, made it a better attraction. And it never was as good. Tower of Terror was never as good at Disneyland because of the way the ride path was set up at Land. It just went up and down. It didn't have the forward movement that you have at World. So I'm glad they did something different with it. And it's just a fun, fun ride. There's an overlay at Halloween that's really awesome. You get 6 different songs, much like you do on Rock and Roller Coaster. So it's a different experience with that. But I love Guardians. Love, love, love it. And I was skeptical. I'm always skeptical of a redo. So must do.
Yeah, those are the two that my daughter keeps telling my son that like we're definitely going to go on. And also on top of that, the next on your list, Incredicoaster, she says that they're going to go on it, even though when she got off it, she was like, Dad, why did you make me do this ride?
Well, maybe she's getting more daring in her old age, but Incredicoaster, another must do. There really aren't a lot of real coasters at Disney parks, and this is one of them. It does have a loop that goes upside down. It's very thrilling. I did it again this week, and I have just recently been to a Six Flags park where I did like some real crazy coasters, and it's still not that level of scary, but it's a good coaster with an inversion, and the theming is a lot of fun. I really like the Incredibles theming, so I think that's worth doing. And it's not too hard to get on often. There's a single rider line. It's on Genie Plus. If you do it early enough in the day, the standby line can often only be 20 minutes, which is great. I think it's just far enough back in the park that a lot of people don't make their way there immediately.
Yeah, it's very Expedition Everest-like in its habits. You know, Genie Plus isn't bad. The single rider line makes a big difference. And it's like just a little bit too thrilling for people to do multiple rides, except for the real thrill junkies. So yeah, I totally agree. It's like not hard to get on, which means, you know, I'm guessing that my kids are going to ride it multiple times this trip.
All right, we'll see. And then I have, I guess, 2 bonuses in this category of must do. And these are seasonal attractions. During the holidays, Small World in Disneyland Park becomes Small World Holiday, and then Haunted Mansion becomes Haunted Mansion Holiday, and that runs during the Halloween season and the Christmas season. So if you were there during those times of year, those 2 overlays are must-dos, in my opinion, because you won't see them anywhere else, and it's just they're both fantastic. Disney really goes all out for both of them. Yeah, I kind of don't ride Haunted Mansion very much except for during the Haunted Mansion holiday season, which of course now is close to half of the year, to be fair.
Yeah, they just announced the refurb dates. It's going to close August 14th and reopen September 1st. So it's going to be like Christmas for 4 months at Disneyland. That's how it goes. I'm looking for, Haunted Mansion. Oh, it wasn't closed when we went, but I wasn't able to get on it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that's different on the West Coast from the East. All right, so let's move to the second tier that you have, the strongly consider rides. You know, if you only have one day, you hit those rides that we just talked about, but, you know, with more time or, you know, if you have a little bit of time in your schedule that you want to fit another ride in, you know, what do we got here?
All right, so I'm going to first start with a group of attractions. I call these the unique Fantasyland attractions. So these are the things in Fantasyland at Disneyland that you won't have at World. And first up is Snow White's Enchanted Wish, which is a redo of Snow White's Scary Adventures that's still fairly new. There'll be elements that you'll be used to from Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, but it's different enough. It's really just a well-done classic dark ride that now has all the technology that's updated and lighting updated. So I think it's a great attraction, and I do it a lot of the times now. Also would recommend Pinocchio, although like Mr. Toad, it has a scary element, so you have to be careful with younger kids with that one. But again, it's kind of weird and kind of dark, and not in the like light sense, but in the dark humor kind of sense. So be careful with that one. Also would recommend Storybook Canals and or Casey Jr.'s Circus Train, which follows some of the same path. So you can maybe do either or depending upon what your family is interested in. And these are great attractions for toddlers, younger kids. You see some sections of the park that are throwback and unique.
Yeah, Casey Jr. is definitely more for younger kids, but I would say that Storybook Canals, like I think people of any age could enjoy. I guess like the older kids might be bored, but as an adult, I really enjoyed going through. Basically, you're going through miniaturized versions, models of various Disney stories and properties, and I really enjoyed that and had a lot of fun. Just relax. I love a slow boat ride, and I just really enjoyed that one. So that's pretty good. Now going to the opposite end of the spectrum, what are the thrill attractions at Disneyland that are worth riding, even if you've or strongly considering riding, even if you've done them already at Disney World?
So I would throw both Space Mountain and Thunder Mountain, both of which are in Disneyland Park, into this category. Of course, those rides are both at Disney World. They're different enough at Disneyland, and they're just solid rides that I think a lot of people will want to do them. Space is more different, I would say, because the way the ride vehicles are set up is a different configuration. It's 2x2 at Disneyland, where it's more of a bobsled style at World. And I actually find Space better at Disneyland because it's just not as jerky. To me, Space at World is a little more like Matterhorn, a little more like put you in traction, take your Advil. So it's a smoother ride, in my opinion, at Land. So, and Big Thunder, I think, has some scenes that you wouldn't experience at World. So it's worth doing both of those. And both of those are fairly easy to get on. Space has a single rider line that's back now. Big Thunder is a pretty easy snag on Genie Plus. So you can fit those in without having to try too hard.
The TNT explodes on Big Thunder Disneyland.
Spoiler.
Automatically. Spoiler. Automatically makes it better. Now, the next one you had on the list, Web Slingers, I was a little surprised just because I think it's a lot of fun. And honestly, yeah. This is the first one where I disagree. I think I would probably put it on my must-do list. I would say that like maybe in a vacuum, it would be only in the strongly consider list. But because you can get on by a single rider line and really cut down the wait that way, I feel like it's definitely worth doing. It's definitely a unique attraction. And Tom Holland Spider-Man, that's a lot of fun. So you have it on strongly consider. I have it on must-do. But either way, definitely have it something you're considering doing if you're visiting Disneyland.
Yeah, it was a wobbler for me. I almost always do it, but it is criticized by a lot of people. A lot of people don't think it's that great of an attraction, but I think the idea of being able to shoot webs using just your hands instead of like a blaster like you do on Buzz or your little ping pong thing that I don't know what it's called on Toy Story Midway Mania. I think that's enough.
Slingshot?
Slingshot? It's not a slingshot. It's like a gun that you pull the thing back on. I don't know.
Yeah. Hello, David and Goliath. Pulled it back. Actually, that was probably a swinged one, but whatever.
It probably was.
Swinging one, but yeah. So, funny story, like, we were listening to some, I can't remember which podcast. I would shout out if I remembered, but they were mentioning, I think it was Disney Unplugged, and they mentioned that they were going to go back to Disneyland and they were going to bring their web slinger, like you can buy the accessory to like enhance the attraction. And my daughter's ears just perked up and she's like, you can buy something and I was like, oh man, Disney, just
well, you'll be happy to know, Joe, and hopefully this will continue when you go next month. They were on major sale when I was just there this past week, so you might be able to get it at a discount if you were forced into buying one.
Is that good? I mean, I don't think I would have felt, we're spending a lot of money on this Star Cruiser. I don't need to buy these kids any extra merch, but yeah. So, but it's a lot of fun. I think people criticize weird things about that attraction, including the queue, which fair enough. The queue is pretty boring and could have been themed better, but check it out if you get the chance, especially if you have a chance to do it single rider.
Totally agree. And it's great now that it's on regular Genie Plus. It's not a paid Lightning Lane. So I think that sort of makes it easier to squeeze in now without working too hard at it. All right. So that was sort of the tier 2, I guess, of the Avengers campus attractions. I'm also going to add to this list for strongly consider the tier 2 Cars Land attractions. I mean, to me, DCA is at its best in Avengers Campus and Cars Land. So in Cars Land, there are 2 smaller attractions, neither of which are on Genie Plus, Mater's Junkyard Jamboree and Luigi's something. I can never remember the actual name of it because it's changed a couple of times over the years. But both of them are sort of spinning car rides. Mater's is essentially alien swirling saucers. So I know that means you will have to do it, Joe. But then you have the awesome voice of Tow Mater, Larry the Cable Guy, which is great. Singing songs. I love it. And both of those have holiday overlays as well during the winter holiday season. So that's a fun time to ride additionally. But I think, do one or the other. You don't necessarily have to do both, but you get a sort of a taste of deeper cut Cars Land.
Yeah, and then last on your strongly considered list, you call them controversial DCA, which I kind of get because these are all three of the attractions that I think my daughter's going to make me try to ride that I don't really want to ride. Let's start with the two simple ones. Goofy Sky School is more of a kiddie coaster, but not. It's longer than Barnstormer and not as, I guess, lame. So that's probably the one of the three that I would agree with. Grizzly River Run is a better version of Kali River Rapids, but I still hate those spinning raft water attractions. So I don't love that attraction, but I can see why you consider it. And then finally, Pixar Pal Around, which is a Ferris wheel that like swings. It's really, I don't know. Can you explain how this Ferris wheel works? Because it's hard to explain, but my daughter figured out, they were really into Ferris wheels right now. And I'm like, I do not want to do this one.
Yeah. So there's two different cars on Pixar Pal Around. There's the static cars, which are like a normal Ferris wheel, and then there are swinging cars, and basically they're just on a track. So as the Ferris wheel moves around, the force based upon where the car is on the wheel sends the car sliding down a track.
It's like a marble run
swings. Almost. It is. It's kind of like a marble run. But some people, I mean, to me, that it adds a little bit of thrills and it's fine, but some people are deathly terrified of this, like more than any roller coaster at Disney. The swinging cars terrify them. So make sure you know sort of what kind of person you are before you ride it.
You can see it. Like you can see it when you're like looking at Pixar Pier from the new San Francisco Bridge. If that opens, you get, like if you're watching World of Color, you can see it. And yeah, watching that, some people equals Joe Chung because not interested. But
it's a lot of fun, and it's a great, I mean, even if you don't want to do the swinging cars, it's nice to get a view of the entire park, and you can see Paradise Pier and the Disneyland Hotel from up at the top of the Ferris wheel. So I think you should still do it.
All right, I will not. I don't know. I guess out of like attractions that they could force me to go on, maybe that's one I'll agree to. All right, so let's get to this third tier. What would you characterize these attractions as?
All right, these are kind of only if you're really interested. And some of these are unique Disneyland attractions, but they are just not ones that have captured my love over the years. First up is the Finding Nemo subs, which used to be the old 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is long gone at World. So a lot of people want to do it for that reason because it is sort of the throwback to that memory. But honestly, it's not a great ride. What you see underneath the sea is weak, and the line is super, super long. There's not a way to Genie Plus it. And then I think all of us are probably still a little spooked to be in like an enclosed submarine, shoulder to shoulder with a lot of strangers. It just still feels to me like not 100% comfortable. So keep that in mind. But for me also, it's just the line. I haven't done it in years, and at some point I will again, but it's just not worth, unless you're kind of doing it early in the morning before the line builds, it's just not worth the wait.
I mean, super inefficient loading that thing. Yeah. So that makes sense. All right, what else?
Also, I would add Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin in Toontown to this. It's a cute dark ride, but it also kind of is a painful ride to spin. There are better dark rides that are unique at Disneyland. It's been a little bit neutered recently by some of the changes that were made. Which, I mean, obviously, understandably, the 1990s different than sort of our views of today, but it loses some of its weirdness as a result to me. So it's just not a must-do for me anymore. But if you're back in Toontown and, it is on Genie Plus, you can kind of catch it easily if you are super interested in seeing it.
The next group are classic rides, but pretty similar to the Walt Disney World. Small World, which the non-holiday version, Jungle Cruise, and then the monorail, which I'm still confused, Leslie. Like the monorail, can you ride it without just taking it to the hotel, or like where does it go?
Well, it goes to a stop at the end of downtown Disney, which is close to the Disneyland Hotel. So yes, you can ride it. but you have to have a park ticket because the other stop is in Tomorrowland at Disneyland Park. So you can't ride it just for fun on a non-park day. You have to have a park ticket to be able to ride the monorail. So, and it's often broken down. I know during your visit it's going to be under a refurb, Joe, but it struggles. And so, I often don't ride it because I can't rely on it, even if I'm staying at the Disneyland Hotel.
Makes sense. Thanks for Nothing Disney, by the way, closing it, crushing my son's dreams. And then the last one I really like, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a dark ride based on Monsters Inc. And that was a surprise to us. I didn't even know that existed, but it was a lot of fun when we went on. I thought it was pretty cute.
Yeah, it's pretty cute. I mean, it's sort of one, if you can get it with a short wait, there's a little buddy pass secret way to ride it some of the time, then it's worth doing. And it's different enough that I think for some people it's worth doing for that reason, especially if they're Monsters Inc. fans. But again, I would put it below a lot of the other unique dark rides like Mr. Toad or Pinocchio or Snow White or Alice in Wonderland. It's just not quite of that tier. So, but that said, if you have a DCA day, you're going to end up riding it because there's not enough really attractions at DCA to fill a full day unless you're park hopping.
All right, and then let's get to our last section of the list, which is ignore. I will first mention that a bunch of the ones on the ignore are ignore if you are a Walt Disney World regular because they're exactly the same. And so that's all of Galaxy's Edge, Rise, and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. That's not going to be any different. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, that's the same. Soarin's the same. So there's a lot of attractions that are exactly the same. What are other attractions that you're suggesting people ignore that maybe they're not familiar with at Walt Disney World?
Well, so I guess I should mention first, Fantasyland, you're used to Peter Pan, you're used to a carousel, you're used to a Mad Tea Party and a Dumbo. You can skip all of those, even though they are different. They're just not, unique enough. And in Peter Pan's case, it's inferior. Same with Haunted Mansion, Winnie the Pooh, those kind of attractions. In terms of what I guess maybe you're not used to that you can still skip, there's a lot in DCA to me that's filler. You can skip Jesse's Critter Carousel. It's cute, but if you have a toddler, you're going to ride it, but otherwise skip it. You can skip Golden Zephyr, which is kind of a throwaway ride that often doesn't run. You can skip Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind, which is a retheme of a Bugs Land attraction. You can skip the Silly Symphony Swings, which is a swing ride that you'll see in any theme park, Six Flags around the world. You can skip Jumpin' Jellyfish, which is just a moderate drop ride. There's a lot of things like that. And then, of course, there are, like you said, Soarin', Toy Story Mania is the same, Little Mermaid's the same. So all of those kinds of attractions you can skip. You can also skip, Joe. You can skip the new Chip and Dale Gadget Coaster, which is the rethemed Inspector Gadget Coaster, which is Barnstormer 2.0.
Oh, well, then I guess I can't skip it because my youngest daughter was mentioning today that that's her favorite ride right now. So, yes. All right. Well, that's pretty awesome attraction-wise. Before we get to Disney do's and don'ts and closing things out, are there any just, I guess, experiences that are Disneyland specific that you think people should definitely check out?
Yeah, one thing I would say is there's some unique characters at Disneyland. Like, I think Avengers Campus is worth spending some time in to see the, different superheroes who are coming in and out, which changed based upon what's been released in the movie theaters or in Disney Plus. So I think that's worth it. I'm not a Marvel super fan by any stretch of the imagination, but if you haven't experienced that, I think this is what Galaxy's Edge could have been had Disney invested the more of the money. And of course, now we also have Mandalorian, but you got that at World now too. So there you go.
Good to know. So that is our recommendations for you, our kind of tier list of Disneyland attractions if you're visiting Disneyland and you're pretty familiar with Disney World. Obviously, if Disneyland is like kind of your first Disney park, try everything. And like we said, though, you can still use this as depending on how much time you have. And a reminder, Disneyland's hours are a lot longer, so you may be able to fit a lot more in a day than you normally would be able to fit into Walt Disney World. All right, well, that's pretty awesome, Leslie. Thanks so much. That's actually, I'm going to take this list with me when we go in August, just because we're going to be super jet lagged, so maybe we won't be able to get as much done as we want to. As always, before we get out of here, can you close us out with a traditional Disneyland do or don't?
All right, this is going to be hard for me to say because you know I'm all about the rides, Joe. But Disney do see some of the current entertainment offerings. I mean, they've been of varying quality over the years, but right now, as we're recording this in mid 2023, they're great. Magic Happens Parade is playing, the Wondrous Journey show, fireworks, and then projections on weeknights is showing in Disneyland Park, and currently Rogers the Musical for a very short run, and maybe that will continue on. So I would definitely try to make time to see some of those sort of nighttime spectaculars or big scale shows, because Disneyland's doing it right and in some ways doing it better than World right now.
Yeah, super excited about Rogers the Musical. I might have to go to that by myself, but I don't think I told you, but my parents will be around too, so maybe I'll dump the kids off on them for a little bit. All right, well, that does it. Thank you so much, Leslie, for all your sage advice, as always. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you on the internet, and also, if they want, you have tons of Disneyland stuff out there.
Yeah, tons. I am at Trips with Tykes on social media, tripswithtykes.com on the internet. And what about you, Joe?
You can find me at AsJoeFlies on social media. If you're looking to plan a trip, I'd always be happy to help you as a travel agent. You can email me, josephchung@travelmation.net. No cost to you. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. This summer is going to be a little bit, Leslie and I are piecing things together because our schedules don't match up too much, but we're going to do our best to get episodes out to you. But thank you for your patience with all of that. Other than that, Leslie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and sharing with us your Disneyland knowledge. And I will see you on Facebook Messenger or maybe Threads as I furiously message you on my trip in August.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, you don't know what Threads is?
I
came
do
out
know what Threads
today.
Is. I know it is.
It came. You gave. Okay, those of you who are not listening on YouTube, she gave me a really funny look. This is the longest outro ever. Okay, bye, everybody.